back to thinksipwrite, and so this time we're going to speak about fairy tales. We figure we'd get into a little history, but...
And happy endings, are they?
Oh, I don't know. You said happy endings. I was wondering what you were talking about.
Do they have happy endings?
Maybe. Maybe their origins come from some pretty dark and sinister places.
They actually do. It's really messed up. Some of the stuff that I looked up to do research, it's really, really messed up.
Yeah, well, everybody knows, too, that the Grimm brothers kind of started a lot of these, and Disney kind of took them and made them more family-friendly. But if you go back before what the Grimm brothers did, and you look at some of the origins of some of this stuff, it's really disturbing.
You know, it really wasn't the Grimm brothers that came up.
I know. In my writing, fairy tales have always been a huge inspiration, and I brought them in Bones of Breakfast, the werewolf novel. I kind of did a little symbology with that, and I used a lot of fairy tales as a basis, in fact. And when I was researching the original fairy tales, I never actually thought about what they were, based on. I just went on what the original fairy tales were.
By what you were told or by what you read as a child.
Right. So
I think all of us feel like that, right? I mean, our parents used to tell us these stories. I mean, growing up in school and everything, right? So I'm going to be looking down a lot because I did take a couple notes. But don't mind. I'm not this guy with all his notes. Anyway, so Rapunzel does not have a happy ending. Did you know that?
I did.
She was actually turned into a frog. And her prince was cursed into a pig snout.
So that was the original fairy tale.
That was the original fairy. But my thing is like, why did you come up with these things, right?
Well, Rapunzel, I actually have an origin for that.
Okay.
It was based in fact. Okay. In the 3rd century, there was a merchant who had a daughter. And it had nothing to do with hair, but he refused her to have any suitors, and he would go out to work every day, and he would lock her in a tower and refuse for her to come out. Now
was she beautiful, right?
They don't specify, but he was a pagan merchant, and while she was there, she started not believing what her father was doing or his way of thinking. So she actually converted to Christianity, and her name was Barbara. And after she died, she actually was made a saint. She is Saint Barbara.
Okay, so this is the thing I just told you was actually a fairy tale prior to what we know, and then the story, the origin is what you're saying. Okay, so, but wouldn't any father want to protect their daughter?
Yeah, but to the point where you're locking them in a room, that just means they're going to rebel.
Right. But at that point in time, that's kind of what they did, right? To keep their daughters pure, and
Some of them did to the extremes. I mean, I think that was an extreme case. I mean, he really locked her, up.
Right. It's crazy. I mean, some of these things, I think they're so messed up.
Well, Hansel and Gretel was based on the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317. And in that time, in real life, people were starving so much that they would often abandon their children and leave them, just kind of like in the story with the father and the stepmother.
Well, they did because there was no money.
And a lot of things that happened back then were cannibalism. People were eating each other. So that's where this whole story comes into. There's cannibalism and abandoning of kids, and it's kind of
I actually have to say, I think
disturbing.
the first Hansel and Gretel movie I watched was really creepy. It was actually a movie. It wasn't a cartoon. It was a movie. I think it was done in the 70s, I think. It was very creepy. But it was one of the first ones that I watched, and that freaked me out. How the witch and stuff like that, and that was one of the stories that I was actually...
Witch dance like that? They do that?
Probably. The one that I actually did a lot of notation on, because it's probably one of my top 3 favorite, Snow White. Actually, my brother, it was one of his favorite movies, Snow White. When he was little, he loved it. He loved the dwarves and everything. But the dwarves didn't have names until Disney came along.
Right.
So her name was Margaret, if I'm not mistaken. Marguerite or something like that. 16th century, she was a Bavarian woman, and her brother used small children to work for them. And they actually worked in the mines and stuff like that, and a lot of them became deformed working in the mines. So they used to call them dwarves.
It was like slave trade.
Exactly.
Children, and they were deformed children.
Exactly. And then the poison apple did come into play, but it was an old man that would present these poison apples to these children.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that works. Maybe the poison apples were really deforming these children.
Yeah, they don't.
Right?
There's a lot of missing facts in
Right.
there, but they do know that there was a woman named Margaret who basically ended up living with these 7 kids that were referred to as dwarves. You know. Here's the funny part.
But wait, before we go into anything, it's her stepmother despised her.
Right.
And then that's when they sent her away to Brussels. And that's when she fell in love with Prince Philip II. And he became her steamy lover.
Oh.
That's what they say, their steamy lover.
That's interesting. His name was Prince Philip.
Prince Philip
Wasn't Prince
II.
Wasn't Prince Philip the prince in Sleeping Beauty?
Right.
In the Disney version. Right.
Prince Philip II, and he became her steamy lover. And his father is actually the one that poisoned Snow White. Yeah.
I wonder if
Margaret.
I wonder if the show Once Upon a Time, Snow White in that her other name is Mary Margaret. I wonder if they because they always did a lot of research in this.
Thought about that.
Yeah, well that's why you have this genius sitting next to you.
I never thought about that. Seriously, I never thought about that.
Like obviously,
Never put the
you said
two and
it
two
like
together.
4 times. So you never thought about it? She never thought about it ever.
I just think it's interesting. These backstories are really, they're crazy.
Well, Beauty and the Beast was based on a 16th century French nobleman named Petrus Gonsalves and his wife Catherine. Now, the interesting thing about them is that he had hypertrichosis. Now, if you remember from my novel, hypertrichosis is an actual real disease that it's basically uncontrollable hair growth on the face, everywhere. They look like the Wolf Boy of Mexico has that. And he was basically treated as a savage. And they ended up having normal kids, but they were basically frowned upon as well. So that's where the whole Beauty and the Beast story came in. So Cinderella.
Okay.
Now, the original fairy tale was kind of gruesome, but it's actually based on a Greek woman named Rhodopis.
I did read this,
in
yes.
500 BC in Egypt,
and
actually.
And wasn't she slaved into Egypt?
She was sold into slavery, and
blonde-haired, blue eyes.
They thought she was something special because of her blonde hair and blue eyes, and basically one of the princes or the pharaohs at the time ended up buying her golden shoes to basically declare her as his property, so that he could do anything he wanted with her.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of...
they were actually true stories, but our kids are growing up Beauty and the Beast, they fall in love, and it's this whole fantasy.
Sleeping Beauty's another one.
There's a whole history behind it. Sleeping Beauty actually growing up was my all-time favorite.
I think that was probably one of mine too, just because of the villain. You know,
Maleficent was a badass.
Yeah, she's probably one of the best villains of all time. But the original story with that was that this guy, his wife or his daughter, fell and hit her head and basically went into a coma. And back then they didn't know what that was. He knew she was breathing, but he didn't do anything. She was basically legally dead, and he laid her in a bed just to basically preserve her. He wasn't going to bury her alive. And a king who was out on a mission actually stumbled upon her in the castle.
Right.
And he ended up raping her. And later on, when he went home to his family, it turns out this woman ended up waking up, and she gave birth to twins. And then the king's wife found out about her, and ended up trying to have both kids and her.
Dude, that's messed up, man.
Yeah. Goldilocks and the Three Bears was also based.
That was actually one of my favorite stories. My parents used to tell that story to me when I was little.
Did you know that Goldilocks was not actually a person?
What the heck was she?
It was the original fairy tale was written. There was this guy who watched a fox, a golden fox, like a golden-haired fox.
Yeah.
Walk into a bear cave and watched three bears attack this fox and throw it out in pieces.
So he just came up with the concept of...
Because it was a golden-haired fox,
but who would come up with the concept of, this bed is just right, this oatmeal is just perfect?
Well, you got to embellish, when you're writing stories. I mean, I change stuff around all the time. You just got to embellish on it.
You authors got something going on up there.
Oh yeah, there's lots. You probably don't even want to know about it. What were some of your favorites? You said Sleeping Beauty.
Sleeping Beauty was one of my favorites. My brother, obviously, he loves Snow White. Which, if he watches this, he's 25 now. I don't know if he wants people to know that. Maybe he does. He's an adult now. Yeah. He has a daughter. I did love Red Riding Hood. Mm-hmm. I loved that story. Just like bedtime, my parents would tell those stories, like the three little pigs. We actually didn't look that up. That might have been a good one to know what was the backstory with that one. I don't know. I have a couple of them. I always loved those fairy tales. Hansel and Gretel, like I said, I was scared of that movie, but I also loved it. I was fascinated by the whole story that I watched. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I
like the way the creativity of some of the stuff was. I mean, when Disney got a hold of it, and I love the Disney movies, but it becomes so predictable that at the end,
But my thing is, why is it so sad at times? Like somebody dies, like something is very depressing. If you actually look at the Disney movies, it's very depressing in the beginning. Somebody dies always.
What Disney movie was it that it was like every there wasn't, I don't think, a dry eye in the theater, was it? Well, it wasn't even a fairy tale. I think it was Up or something.
Which one?
No, it was Up.
Was it Up?
Yeah, remember the old guy in the beginning? He dies.
No, he doesn't.
His wife dies. Yeah. No, Lion King.
Lion King, his dad dies. Like any of them. Well, I'm trying to think of Dalmatians. What happens there? Is there something sad there?
I haven't seen that one in so long. I couldn't
Obviously, Cruella de Vil wants to take them, but I'm trying to think of what's sad there. But Sleeping Beauty, she's sleeping, obviously. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Snow White. You think of Pinocchio. He's a wooden. He wants to be a boy. Actually, we should have looked that one up because I think that's a good story behind that one.
Yeah, we should have.
Yeah. Uh-huh. But, that was one of my favorite movies, too, Pinocchio.
Was it?
Yeah. I like the whole concept behind it, and I think it's great for kids.
Yeah.
As far as, don't lie. Like, in Brazil, we do a lot of things like, oh, you're lying, and we do the whole, your nose is growing kind of thing. And as a child, my dad would always do that. Like, ooh. You
never know. Some of these are just pure fiction, But these, a lot of these were based in fact. So they might not ever have any real historical backgrounds, but it's still interesting.
It's some of the things that you can revert back to, I guess, to your kids.
I didn't look up. One of the things that I passed on was Alice in Wonderland and the Wizard of Oz novels.
Now, with Alice in Wonderland, I just think she's a girl that had issues.
Either that,
I think it was just something
Lewis Carroll
imagination
was on a lot of stuff, when he wrote it. You can see it in the writing. It's an excellent
But was it
work,
him? Did he actually or did he go by something that happened in his life? You guys, authors, don't authors go by sometimes traumatic things that happen? They incorporate it into their stories.
It could be happy things too, though.
Absolutely.
I have two children's books.
Right.
Little Girl in the Land of the Hiccups was based on my daughter, who, when you were pregnant with her, she constantly was hiccuping. Yes. You could see her hiccup.
In my belly.
And she had it when she got out. She was hiccuping a lot. Mm-hmm. So,
So even now until today, she's going to be 9, and she gets hiccups, and we both start, laughing about it.
And then I wrote A Little Boy in the Land of the Sleepless Nights, and of course knights were knights in armor, but that was based on the first couple years of our son's life, who he had a hard time sleeping.
Yeah.
Once he slept, he was fine.
Oh, he was out.
But going to sleep was like nightmare.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just little things like that inspire stories.
Right.
I really should have looked up the history of the Oz books though, because Baum wrote 15 novels.
Well, yeah, you and Lana read that.
Yeah,
Our daughter.
and they progressively get better, and it's like you have so much more appreciation for what the Wizard of Oz is when you read the original.
Because there's so much backstory to it than just what we know. But
and it's dark.
I have to tell you,
it's dark.
I have to tell you though, I'm fine with what I know, but I hear you guys reading it a lot of time, like, ooh, that's quite interesting.
Like the Tin Man.
Right.
He wasn't always tin. He was a tin woodman. He was a woodman who ended up getting an enchanted axe and cutting off his own arms, legs, and head.
Right.
Because,
there's just, people could do a lot of research nowadays, and we're lucky to have the internet where we could do that, to find that stuff, So.
All right. Well, I think that was a fun little episode.
Yeah.
And I gotta make sure that this isn't like a poisoned chalice of something. So, cheers.
Cheers.
What are your favorite fairy tales? Chime in.
Comment below.
Like, subscribe.